I will just say, I'm actually today going to publish a video I did on my stream yesterday about what I don't like about Fearless Draft. It's not totally just about like the draft itself, like some of it is, but like one of the main points I essentially address, because this will be different. If you don't know what we're going to address, is Freak himself from Riot made a whole video of like addressing some of these things and what he thinks about. So we're going to more address that. But what my main point I made basically is this, which is the thing I don't like is I've already seen it in a million Reddit threads, Yamato. Fans are doing this thing where when you point out that the flaw of Fearless Draft, obviously, it's going to make like the games essentially lower quality because people haven't practiced the comp and they can't know what they like. If you don't know, guys, literally before pro games, people do like a flow chart of what the draft's probably going to be. And I can tell you, if I was to tell you the worst LEC games, they're nearly all going to be the ones where one or maybe both coaches never got anything close to the comps they thought, and they just end up doing some shit they hadn't even practiced. So first of all, I think a lot of games would be like that. Well, the problem is when you point out what is a flaw with the format, fans take it and flip it and make that the problem of the players, the pros, not the format. So what they'll say is, you'll have seen this already, I guarantee you've seen this if you read any Reddit threads. They go, hey, he's a pro player, I'd expect him to be able to play more champions. And essentially, the reason why this is so perfect for me specifically, Yamato, is this is exactly the same logic that has been used in Counter-Strike, my original game, forever. Because in Counter-Strike, instead of champions, the variable in Counter-Strike is the map that you play on, the terrain, right? Well, because that has such a massive impact on whether you win or lose, people would say the same thing. And the genius of it is, because in Counter-Strike, there's only 7 maps at any one time in the map pool, right? Well, that makes a fan think it's only 7. And what they're mistaking is they think, well, why doesn't everyone just go down all 6 except the one they ban? And it's because here's the main part they miss. You only have a limited amount of time in the day. So, for example, all the time you put into your 6th best map, you're no longer spending on your best map. So, by the way, now your best map starts to get worse. Meanwhile, by the way, if something's your 6th best map, there's probably other reasons aside from practice that you're bad on it. Maybe it doesn't suit your style, your personnel. Then so first of all, it's not the case that you can just practice more. By the way, if just practicing more worked, then Koreans would know every single champion to the best possible level, wouldn't they? They practiced an infinite amount. And then the other thing that they always miss on this particular topic is, let me think, if the first one was the one about the limited practice time, what was the other angle then? Oh, the other angle is, what was the other one?
I have another angle if you need backup, bro. Because the other angle, right, is I think fans in general, bro, for me, is that they lose the context of who they're playing against. It's like always a conversation like, oh.
You've nailed it. That's it. You've nailed it, Yamal. The other problem is this. Essentially, this is what my video was about, Monty. I'm just doing some side stuff because I was going to talk about the Freak video. Basically, the other main problem that you're going to see with the Fearless Draft is this. It's that they're going to say that what you're just hinting at, Yamal. They're going to go, wow, a pro player getting paid millions can't play Thresh. It's like, no, you haven't made the right sentence there. What you need to say is, wow, a pro player can't just play Thresh against the 10 best players in the world that's the problem. You're not playing it against your mate. You're actually playing like the best player in the world on the other champion. That's what you can't do. So that's why the analogy like Counter-Strike is, even if you practice a million hours on your 6th best map, the best teams in the world are still going to murk you on it, man. Like, that's not even going to help in that scenario. So essentially, I actually think my video was mainly more about like, the fan reaction to it. Anyway, we keep Monty's back now. We can get into the Fearless Draft stuff from Freak.
Yeah. So I do think Freak released a good video. And if you guys haven't seen it, it came out on the channel. Basically, it gave a timeline of how the Fearless Draft thing started. So apparently they started discussing at the end of 2023, and the esports team used 2024 to gather feedback before they decided to implement it in a limited capacity in 2025. But also, there's an implication that it might just be everywhere all the time in 2026, which is like, if this goes well, and I don't know what going well means, because to me, this is a pretty terrible experiment. Not only because I dislike Fearless Draft, but because the way they are doing the experiment is going to give them weird information, which we'll get to in a little bit.
By the way, it's also Monty, that in different regions, they're using different ones. Some of them use the hardcore Fearless Draft. Some of them just use normal, as far as I can tell. Am I wrong on that one? Like, I believe some of the Asian regions use hardcore, mate.
They're all using the hardcore one, I believe.
Oh, really? Even the Western one.
But previously for like challenges series, I think it was mixed. But currently everyone has hard Fearless, yeah.
I also think that's mad. It's one thing if you just went into the middle one. The hardcore one's the worst one. That's the one where, for real, I made this point in my video. The worst thing about the hardcore one is, if I'm playing against BLG, I don't care. If I'm in a best of 5 Yamato, game 1, I'm picking first pick Jax no matter what. So now he can never ever play it. Now you don't even get one pin game on Jax. I actually think that's the worst version of that form. Anyway, keep going, Monty.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll get into some of this because I think Freak brought up a lot of points that were good about what they're concerned about. And I think they do have some very valid concerns that we all have about kind of like game quality and metagaming the draft, which is like basically sacrificing a game to kind of like screw with one of your opponents potentially, which, by the way, guys, is definitely going to happen. Somebody's going to try it at some point in time.
Why wouldn't you?
So there was a lot of stuff that he brought up. I would encourage you to watch the video. I do think Freak is like a thoughtful guy, but I also am going to bring up some points that he did not bring up right now that are very concerning to me personally. So my first one is, if they are using this to see if they want to run Fearless Draft next year or like make it the permanent de facto way of drafting in League of Legends, why are we running it at the same time we are starting a brand new season of League of Legends where you have changed absolutely everything? It's not really a controlled experiment because players do not know how to play the game of League of Legends at this point in time because the patch just dropped. No one knows the ideal way to play around.
The games already, even the tower looks fucking alien when you see it. It looks like fucking the Hammerdinger's rocket, something like it's mental, yeah.
But we literally changed the entire objective pace of the game. We added a new objective, an Otacon. We added feats of strength. This is the part of the season that is always highly experimental in terms of macro because of the degree to which Riot changes the game every year. So from what I've seen, Yamato, and I haven't seen as many games as you have, but I have seen a number of them so far in LPL and LCK, it doesn't even feel like most players are playing champions that are very different from last year. It feels like the pools that are being used are basically the same champion pools that are being used last year. And because the games have been, well, at least in LCK, the games are best of 3, it doesn't actually force you too deep into those champion pools. So it's kind of just like a mixed bag of stuff that's been used before. And I haven't seen anything particularly like super new. Maybe
that's
like
the LPL's where it's going to be, money, because everything's best of 5 in that group stage. So by the time you get to a game 5, it could at least potentially happen, right?
Right. And I mean, we've seen some like new Victor, but there hasn't been a lot of, I would say, weird stuff yet.
No, not really. Like I would say in general, it's like we see this, like the metas that we have seen in the past, it kind of gradually goes down. It's like the AD pool, Ashe Varus is out, Corki is the strongest, Kalista is out, and then all of a sudden it transverses into, melee supers are open, Xayah versus Kai'Sa with Ziggs in the pool as well in the upper bracket. Some players play Caitlyn, and then it just kind of divulges deeper and deeper. And it's more so, I think it becomes more of a trap of mistakes from what I've seen so far. It's like in 4-5, it's less of whoever can find the champions that make the most sense rather than like a team just running out of champions. I feel like that's the main thing I've seen so far, which is a relatively small sample size, right? Like, for example, the last game that we saw was game 4, Weibo Ultra Prime. There was like Orianna first pick. They denied the Nocturne by picking it away. And then blue side is just like out of champions. So they end up like on Kindred, Xayah, Bard, and they're just trying to kind of piece it together real time. Because what Thorin mentioned before, it's like in terms of how you plan out the draft is you kind of have like this, like almost like a tree that expands out in terms of the scenarios. It's like, this is the first 3 bands, this is our 1-2 scenarios, and then you just kind of work from there. Now it's just like the amount of kind of mutations that you need to be ready for are kind of crazy. So I see more like shitty drafts, losing games rather than like you're just genius winning out on the spot. And also in best of 3s, it's just too limited. At least it's better than what the LEC has, which is like, we have fearless draft. Here's 3 weeks of BO1s. Right. Enjoy. Go fuck yourself.
By the way, if you don't know, that's why they claim in LEC, no, it's fearless for the playoffs. Because there's no such thing in one game, as the idiot. It just doesn't get activated. Technically, it's for the whole tournament. It just doesn't get activated from one game, does it? So, no, it's true. That is true.
And I think the other thing that Freak didn't mention, and this is like really critical, is that the function of any ban in any MOBA game is going to be to lower the quality of that game from a play perspective. And you might be like, well, what do you mean by that, Monty? Well, they're just taking away the most powerful champions. Well, the thing is that when a player cannot play their best champion, you are objectively watching worse gameplay. So you have to be very careful about the number of bans. And the thing about Fearless is what you are doing is you are adding more bans. So this will, for instance, I would not be sad if I watched a best of 5 and Bin played Jax all 5 games. But now I exist in a world where I might never watch Bin play Jax for weeks because his opponent will take it away.
It was just Monty. I believe it was something. Kira found this on my Discord. I believe it was something like there was like a 3 or 4 month period last year where Bin only played 4 champions. But so unsurprisingly, Monty, no one ever said he has no champion. But it was just the best of those champions. You just couldn't stop him. He could pick him in any matchup, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm usually like when we talk about the best players in the world, there is a hype to seeing them play their best champions, and so any ban of those champions basically means that we are not seeing the best that this game has to offer. And when we talk about, Freak does talk about decreasing quality, but the example he uses is like, oh, we've banned so many champions, we're on to fringe kind of shitty picks that players may not play a lot. But you're also just potentially denying viewers watching players play their signature or very best picks for potentially entire playoffs, right? If teams really refuse to let them have it. Because, and you could say, well, they could ban it the entire time too. Yeah, but them banning it is way more interesting because it's taking a ban every game than them banning it once and then taking it in the next draft and then it being unavailable for the next 3 games, right? So to me, that's a really big problem. And that's one of the things that I think you always have to remember about MOBAs in general is that any ban is a potential decrease in the quality of the game.
Because that's the weirdest thing is, I'll give you a quick example, Monty. If you notice, one of the things I try to do on these shows is almost like a philosophical framework for an idea. It's not just the idea itself. So one of the principles I always try to explain to people is that when you're doing some sort of a rule change, you have to ask, like, what are you trying to implement by doing that? So one of the biggest problems I think here is this, Monty. I'll give you an example. In my native game of Counter-Strike, people always used to say, I want upsets at the major because it's exciting. And what I always tell them is the classic thing we've said on the show many times is that in the short term, an upset's exciting because a team you don't expect to win wins. But sometimes, for example, if that then means that a bad team makes the bracket stage, it's like when NRG made it 2 years ago. They're just going to get clapped immediately. It's actually going to, in the short term, you gain novelty, but in the long term, you get a worse best of 5 for it as a result. So what you're actually meaning is this. What you really mean isn't, I want to see upsets from shit teams beating good teams. What you mean is, I just want there to be more parity or more turnover. I want like a lot of good teams so that then there's like unexpected results, but then I get both sides. I get the unexpected result, but then that team can do something. So the real problem here is people say the line about Fearless Draft, but it's good because it's going to force us to see more champions. In isolation, that might sound good. What you really mean is, I don't want to see a million as Orianna versus Azay games when it's that meta. Look, I get that. I don't want to see the Azay fucking Corky games every time. We've all had that meta every few years, right? But what you're missing is, you mean you want other champions picked, but people to be good on the champions, you have to put that part in square brackets. You don't mean just make champions appear on my screen even if people can't pilot them. That will be even worse. Even if the novelty of seeing the new champion is cool, you'll get really old watching a bunch of teams misplay comps and like run a zillion that they've never run into a comp that they've never run, or the comp they've never run. Like, that will get really old, unfortunately. So I totally understand the initial thing that there are some fans who don't want to watch one matchup a million times over, especially if they're not like lane specialists or something. But it's not necessarily that you don't totally get what you want. This is like you've gone to the fucking gin, Monty, and you've gone, my first wish is to have more champions in League of Legends. Congratulations, I've now made it so you can only play 1 per game. What? That's not what I wanted. Like, be careful with the terms and conditions, with the pact with the devil. Yeah, you've just done that again. You've wrecked.
Yeah, it's just as a follow-up as well. It's like just looking at like League of Legends history. It's like the identity of the most legendary players is always tied to the champions that are played, whatever moment it is in time. I think what they did in the LCK was so perfect in Game 5s in terms of like OGN, right? In terms of the blind picks, it's like just like the Z moment wouldn't have happened because it's like Fake wasn't allowed to play Z most of the time, or like certain champions, or we had the LeBlanc Game 5 as well, where they invited it and played the Morgana. Like, these are things that are so memorable in itself And I would be so scared if it would divulge into a fearless draft all year long, because I think it would be absolutely atrocious. I do think it's one of those things where if it was temporarily for Winter Split, and that would be the time where they use to kind of experiment and test out different formats, because that was the impression that I had, where they would use Winter Split to test out things, and that would be kind of like the dynamic split, because usually it's like in terms of how things ramp up, in my mind, testing players on different skill sets in a shorter time frame, I don't mind that, because it's like Winter Split is like what, 7 weeks. I don't mind that kind of an investment, but everything else in my mind should be that there should be a clear ramp up towards the World Championship, and the World Championship should be the epitome of like good gameplay, because it's like it bothers me too when they make very, very big patch changes, or like they just rework the game, and like season 15 was probably like the most egregious one when they introduced like juggernauts, and then all of a sudden what the World Championship was just completely different. Or 2018 was a good example too, where like RNG was the best team the entire year, and then Worlds all of a sudden Akali, Aurelia, Urgot is just dominating together with Aatrox. Like in my mind, I think there should be like a clear build-up, because this is also how Riot has set things up. It's like World Championship is supposed to be the epitome of everything. It's supposed to be super, super cool. And for me, what is important is just the gameplay. I think it's interesting to challenge a different skill set. Like the comparison I would make is, I feel like this is like Chess 360. It's like Chess 360 is like this format where the pieces are in a different spots than usual. It's randomized, and I believe that you have like 30 to 45 minutes ahead of the game to kind of strategize based on the board position.
Right.
It tests a completely different skill set to the players, and it's very, very interesting, because like the classical format, people have issues with it because it's very like long drawn and it's too strategic. And there's like the blitz format, rapid format, and that is probably like the format that people enjoy the most right now. But the Chess 360 thing is like a good thing to have occasionally. But if that takes over everything, it's like you lose what chess is. It's no longer chess. You're being tested on a completely different skill set, and it's just, who is good at playing random League of Legends in a sense?
By the way, I already saw people saying another classic, I think, fallacy, where they go, but I want to see people's champion balls tested. Then you actually just self-reported yourself for not knowing competitive League of Legends. You already were seeing it. What you just saw for the last 10 plus years was everyone's champion pool being strained to the limit. Remember, we play best of fives in all playoffs nowadays. Like, here's what's hilarious. Guy saying that in the chat. You don't understand that it's not really that, like, Adam didn't try to expand his champion pool. It's that, like, whoever has fucking you know when everyone on Reddit goes, that bloody Yamato cannon's a fraud coach. Why did he pick Aatrox in this matchup? Because you don't know his top lane doesn't play Aatrox, and has tried. Don't worry, he played it in fucking solo queue, and he played a scrim or two. He just can't play it. It's not that Yamato's an idiot and can't pick the champion. You already were seeing all the teams limited by their champion. Spoiler, do you actually believe, I already sadly know the fucking answer to this, it's a rhetorical question. Do you actually believe T1 sat there and thought the champions they played at these last two World Championships were the best ones? No, the worst part about it is that we all now pretend they're geniuses. They so obviously had nothing left in the tank and band-aided based on what they could play. In fact, one of the things you saw, Monty, I changed to even give credit to T1 for in this last Worlds, is I actually think they had fairly fucking shallow champion pools, but they were really smart at knowing when to like ignore the traditional like power pick meta and just pick stuff they could use. Like, we can do this with Faker, or we can do that with Owner. Like, they sort of just like did a band-aid approach. But to a fan, I guess actually what they did is they had every champion at their availability, and they just chose those were the best one in the game. So I think what you're missing again is like you'll just see worse games on those champions. I don't know why people, by the way, why are we just all wrong on this? Why are the people who've actually watched the game forever, why are we morons who can't possibly, I mean, Yamato's only coached half a dozen fucking pros, but he doesn't even know himself that whether players can play champions. But let's check. Billy Big Balls in gold, he knows that you can just play all champions. Oh, well, my bad. Then welcome the new host, Billy Big Balls from the Twitch chat. Thank God for that.
Well, it's also that in my mind, in the last couple of years, if we're looking at just recent history, there hasn't been a lack of exciting finals or strategic diversity.
No, of course not.
Look at the MSI finals from last year. Look at the World Finals from last year. Look at the LCK Spring Finals. There's random champions just being picked up in these games. Like Lehenz's Blitzcrank was very famous pocket pick that was coming through. Was anybody dissatisfied because of the breadth of champions in some of these most important matches? My argument would be no, they were great games. And I also am concerned separately, and I want to get Yamato's opinion on this as a coach, but one of the things that really concerns me is that every pro player forever has been basically selected because they play probably a certain number of champions at an extremely high level, and then they kind of have a few tier 2 champions that they can play, but they've mostly been able to get away with, some pro players probably champion pools of like 7, 8, 9 champions realistically for a long time. And also, if we're talking about new players, if you're a rookie player and you're only playing Fearless, you are going to get galactically smashed because many rookie players will play like 3 champs as training wheels when they get into the pro scene. They'll play very standard, very safe meta champions, and then they'll grow their pool over time. But rookies are going to get destroyed. I think Fearless is great for developing rookies if it's in tier 2. Okay? It's a very good format.
If someone hasn't worked with pros, this is something maybe only Yamato could speak to. This is why when you hear those stories that are real about back in the day SOAS or Wonder, when they really did first time a champion on stage, that's why those stories always get told by coaches and teammates, because bro, that is alien. The idea you could do that, but then actually like show proficiency and win in a matchup, that is insane. Like that is such an outlier. You should not expect that at all from normal pros.
Right.
Like, what do you think?
But we basically my point is we sorted pro players for being elite at a few champions and then very good at a few champions. Yes. And what you will do with all Fearless is you're going to change that to like a guy who's like pretty good at a bunch of different champions is going to be the more valuable player.
See, another point I even made in my video was the best example of where this is going to kill the pro scene is, remember, LEC's full of rookies now. Think of Jojo Pion, bro. Remember that story that Jojo Pion was at like MSI or something and didn't know that Gangplank barrels crit because he just never played the champion Gangplank. Bro, imagine that, but like in real matches all the time. If you're a rookie who's like a 17-year-old rookie from France or something, good luck. You can't play 169 champions or whatever. Like, you're going to have a really hard time. In fact, that could even become a fucking strategy in itself.
Speaking Doran didn't know what Nunu did.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. He's played for a million years, mate. Imagine how many games he must have played a solo queue. Yeah.
No, just on my end, it's like the characteristic of a player. It's like it's a big strength. It's a very unique skill set to be able to pick up champions on the fly. Like famously, I remember Zoro Zero, right? Like Zoro Zero was a player that was insanely good. But I remember always talking to Nukta. He's like, this guy needs to play like 200 champs on the same champ before he can remotely pick it. Right. And I remember Nukta was telling me, he's like, this motherfucker is investing time into Akali. Like Akali is so damn useless top, right, and he's investing his sauce on Akali, and I'm gonna have an Akali on my team because this guy is investing time into it. It's a very unique skill set, like the players you guys mentioned, Wunder and so on. It's like I have worked with players where they are allowed to go deeper into a pool because I trust them in those moments. And some players are the type of players that should be picking 1, 2, 3, and they are mastering a few champions. Like you have that guy that is willing to pick Cassandra 1, 2, 3 every single game, and that is his skill set. I don't mind at all if it's temporary. If it's winter split and we want to try something new, because maybe the benefit is that players and teams figure out like new champions because they're forced to go out of the comfort zone, and maybe it has an impact on the overall pool as things continue because you are forced to look a little bit deeper. But if it takes over everything, I do think it kind of like just kind of ruins the sanctity of League. Like I am even so picky that I think it's like in terms of how the World Championship is, even the World Championship as a tournament tests a very different skill set in comparison to what Regional League does in terms of how it's structured, how little practice you get. That's why, like in my mind, T1, they are so good at figuring out what works for them, and they're also very, very good at taking like these gut calls in terms of just saying, oh, the meta has moved away from Ahri, we should play Silas and transition into Galio. The game 5 happened with the Galio being blind picked at the beginning of the tournament. Everyone had very different opinions of what was OP. And then you see these teams that are dominating regionally do very, very poorly at the World Championship because a team like Gen G, a player like Chovy, likes to put the repetitions in. It's like, why is he so demonically good? It's because he's played that matchup probably 200 times. He's drifting with Koki on Talia players, spacing them with less range, is because he put in the hours. Chovy is not Chovy without that practice. And you can see it as you go deeper into the tournament where he sticks to comfort. He kept picking Ari, Zeka kept picking Ari, and Knight and Faker surpassed them because they were willing to just play something else on the fly. It's just a very different skill set, and the way you acquire players, you kind of want players with different skill sets. It's like those players that go deep like a Caps. It's like you can go 4-5, you know he can pull out a Silas, a Yasuo, and that's like, wow, he's so good at that. But there's going to be players that get hard exposed, and I hope there is forgiveness because it's just a different skill set coming into the rest of the year. So I'm happy with the split, but the whole year I'm scared. I don't want to see that at all.
For this cup to kick off the year, I think it's a fun and exciting way to start the year because in every region, this first phase doesn't really matter, right? It's going to a very small international tournament. It's like a fun way to kick off the year. And to your point, Yamato, I totally agree. If this is going to give us more champion diversity and pocket picks in the rest of the year, because they're going to be forced to like experiment with stuff, it could be really good. It could actually increase champion diversity for the rest of the year, right? Or forever, potentially forever, right? If a player finds a pick or something like that. So as like an opener, I totally get it. Using this for the whole year would be very, very sad.
My problem is this, Monty. It's that you went from this used to be used in third-party exhibition tournaments to it's part of the real circuit. So here's another problem I have as the esports historian, right? One, Yamato just touched on it earlier. Imagine being RNG. Essentially, what happens is Riot make you a game space. So in the off-season of 2017, you make your team. It was actually basically almost the same exact squad if people don't know. You make your team. You pick your players that are going to be good in 2018. You play the splits out, so you win the LPL first split. You've done your job. That's the incentive. Play this way, win the split. Then you go to MSI. You play well in that meta. You win that meta. You win LPL summer. You come to World's most important tournament. Oh, what's that? We've completely changed the dynamic how the entire game operates. It's all about solo lane strength. Bad luck for you. By the way, nothing you could do. You didn't have a time machine. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't know we're going to flip it like that. So I guess you're just unlucky that, like, Let Me isn't a fucking God tier, the Shy-esque carry top laner. Like, sorry, turns out you don't win. It's even worse now, because now to do a golden road, you have to somehow win the Fearless part and then all the rest. Fearless is basically a totally different game, thanks to the format, than the rest of League of Legends. So by the way, here's a part people haven't even thought of. The other reason it's mental to have Fearless first, Monty, is people, Yamato can talk about it, people are going to get benched and replaced based on the fucking Fearless split. There are going to be people who get dropped, where it's like I say, what if some, by the way, imagine now being the 18-year-old rookie coming out of the RL with 2 years experience. Oh, I'm now on a hyped team, and it's the first split where we lost. Well, shit, the traditional meta is you replace people, so I guess I'm out. I never even played League of Legends. I was playing some fucking weird draft nightmare simulator. I was playing, I would make a joke there, like, it's like Nico the Pico draft simulator. So I just picked some coach and people think shit. I don't even know if he was bad at draft, but the point is, you're just picking someone where they're just bad at drafting in it, grabs simulator, there you go, whatever.
No, man, it's just, I
make it exhibition, like don't make it part of the circuit. Because like I say, how are you supposed to be the best at this and normal league? They're too different.
I didn't know at all that it's considered for like the whole year. I thought like the way I understood it, the way the messaging was. It's part of
the official circuit though, right? It's not considered exhibition as far as I know, right? I mean, they're treated like normal LPL, split one,
When split will be taken very, very seriously by everybody, I like it as an introduction because it's like at the same time, my understanding was that they are going to use Winter Split as well in terms of what the game is, to introduce whatever like theme there is. Like basically, on the game side that is outside of esports, is like they wanted to create 3 separate themes for the split, so to speak, and that is going to change the game drastically. And I don't know if, because that can also be dangerous. I don't know if after Winter Split, is Atakan going to be gone because the Noxus team is gone and then we're going to have a different theme? Because that can also mix things up in a very, very extreme way. It's like the skill
I don't think Atakan's going to be gone. I just think the feats of strength will be gone. That's what I think will be gone.
Okay. The feats of strength, I don't mind too much. I feel like they are the data suggests that it's not too impactful, but I think that's an entirely separate conversation. I fear for the sanctity of League. I think like the golden rule thing conversation is very specific. I think that matters super much because like it hasn't happened before.
It's less likely now. Yeah, exactly.
It's borderline impossible. It's like if someone is the best team in a year, like wins every tournament, like 2025, they're like instantly like best team of all time.
Probably, yeah.
Like, best team of all time instantly. Like no conversation in terms of just how difficult it's going to be to like tackle all the formats, win the regionals, 3 splits, and 3 internationals, and knowing that 1 international has nothing to do with what everything else has to do with. It's impossible.
And you have to understand, Yamato, they're already fools for trying to make the Grand Slam. The Grand Slam, that's fool's gold, mate. That's a trap that no one can do. Faker's smart, mate. He knows that if you try and do the Grand Slam, you burn yourself out on those first ones. So he doesn't bother trying in LCK and MSI. He just waits until Worlds, saves all his strats, gives Chovy the illusion he's better by like rope-a-doping him. It's sort of like the Rumble in the Jungle, Monty. And then at the end, he just like comes out like Rocky and just wins anyway. And the joke's on you because you didn't know it was only about Worlds. So Faker's got it figured out, mate. All you fools trying to win those splits. Those splits don't even matter. Shout out for the millionth time, by the way, Monty, to all T1 and Faker fans for being so dumb that when your player has won the most domestic titles ever, you actually put forward the argument domestic titles don't matter. You actually can't even help yourselves, guys. You are so fucking stupid. It is insane. Like you are. That should be the base of your argument, you morons. Because here's what you're missing. You don't want to say LCK matters now because you know Chovy beats Faker. LCK needs to matter now because he has like twice as many as Chovy, you cretin. That's actually still a really strong argument for you idiot. But anyway, like that's actually almost a joke. But some people do believe that like if Worlds only matters, what like essentially to go back, why does Winter Split matter? Why does even Spring Split matter? Right? That's the argument. It's only because it has MSI qualification. We pretend Spring Split matters at this point in time. That's actually the real dirty secret. All of you won't admit in League. If you really believe it's just about being the best for Worlds, then you should have just made the whole circuit just a summer split into Worlds and had the rest be a third-party circuit. Does it make sense? But instead you built a whole circuit and then it's like someone really telling me like, oh, the Premier League part doesn't matter, it's just the Champions League. The whole fucking sport of football's watching the league. I don't know why. Again, by the way, to bring it all the way back to Fearless Draft, you know when you all sit at home and go, but I'm bored of seeing Azir and Orianna. It sounds like you're bored with League of Legends, mate. Fucking you're bored with Orianna mid lane. I don't think League's the game for you, mate. Next you're going to tell me you're bored of Lee Sin jungle as well, you daft. It's fucking going to be played forever. That is jungle, you idiots. Like, what are we even doing at this? Well, I guess you're bored with Nar top lane too. Maybe you're just bored with life, mate. Again, I would never suggest any behavior in Minecraft or any other video game or on twitch.tv. But maybe get a new hobby. I don't know, check out fucking manga. That's probably, actually, you know what? I've probably backed into the worst possible recommendation. If you're a moron who plays League, check out manga. So I'm already heady on that one, Thorin. I've seen all the shit manga too.
I will say my final comment on Freak's video is like I felt the mask slip a little bit with Freak because his new balance job started to shine through because one of the positives that he said here was that if Fearless Draft, basically the implication was that if Fearless Draft were to be adopted full time, well, you know what we could do then is jailbreak champs out of pro jail. And for example, famously Rise is basically in perpetual pro jail, which means that he has to have a very low solo queue win rate because if they buff him too much and he's good in solo queue, he just dominates pro play. He talked about Varus.
What does that say about you kids who make up solo queue? You are like fucking insects. Like if we just give a champion a good global ability, the game no longer operates because you're so dumb. It has to be overtuned to fuck so that like a pro's just like, well, it's obvious I'd just do that. Oh, win the whole game. It's like, that's how bad you all are in solo queue. And then the same guy in solo queue, hey, I think Adam needs to play more champions top. You've never played a champion by that logic, you moron. You're playing Fisher Price League of Legends. He's playing actual fucking chess, you moron.
Yeah, so they talk about how champions like he talked about Varus or Maokai Jungle as they basically have to detune them for solo queue, so they have like 47% win rates. because if they had a 50% win rate, then they would just dominate
Oh my
pro play
God!
even more.
You mean Freak? Mr. Rumble Jungle is now using solo queue win rates. Get Dom on the phone right now. Patch him right in immediately. This is some. We need an intervention. Some sort of like this. He's using his own opposite logic from about 3 years ago. It was 2021, wasn't it? MSI. Shout out.
But my concern is that Riot is going to try and use Fearless Draft, because the idea obviously is you could make a champion more broken because you're only going to see it once in a best of 5, and it's not going to
cursed logic, Monty. That's
the
such cursed logic, though, isn't it? That's so cursed.
Exactly.
Hey, this can only break like one game in a best of 5. Like,
yeah, it can't destroy the series, surely, right? So, I do fear that Riot is going to be like, what an excellent time to balance the game for the plebs. If we have Fearless Draft, then we can resurrect all of the champions that we've had to overly nerf in solo queue so they don't dominate the pro scene. That is a deep fear that I have.
The irony of you having fear about Fearless Draft, that's the jokes right themselves. So keep going.
No, I just want to say, bro, like I think, you mentioned yourself like before, Monty, that we've had good amount of diversity in the game, like in terms of champions, in terms of the last World Championships.
Yeah,
I do think I want to credit the boys in the balance team, because I do think it's extremely, extremely challenging to balance this game. It's like the challenge that they face, right, is that like they need to send out patches ahead of time. And I do think that sometimes they can be more aggressive about things because they're trying to create a circumstance where they incrementally nerf something to not completely rip it out of the game like they did in the past. It's like, oh, this is being played too much, let's just rip it out, and then it's gone, and then they have to figure out a way to re-implement it. They rather like gradually like nerf champions over time. Like, I think obviously like Tristana is a very obvious example of this being like a mistake, in the sense that it was incrementally nerfed, and then it was like, let's pull the plug and just send it into bot lane, right? And they admit these mistakes. I think from this position I'm in, I kind of trust the balance team to not give up, because that seems like such a simple solution to commit into Fearless.
I'm going to say one thing, which is instantly going to make everybody hate if they move Fearless Draft to full time. They will buff Yuumi, guys. They're going to fucking buff Yuumi. They're going to do it. If they do Fearless Draft year round, they're going to fucking buff Yuumi. Do you want that?
Monty,
do you want that?
Do you know what's mad? And there's even a counterintuitive logic where if what you're saying is correct, you end up with less champion diversity. Because here's what happens. You overtune all the giga broken champions, like you say, like Rising Pro Player, Yuumi, Zeri, fucking Soy, all the ones that were broken on release. You make them like they're broken again, Monty. And you get ready. Now a series in a best of 5 becomes like one of those like knockout whist games, Monty. It just becomes which one of us chooses to take the Yuumi game, because that's going to happen. Then who does a Zeri game, right? And then who does that? You get less champion diversity. Now you actually have a set amount of cards. It's just who plays it first. You could actually end up in the opposite scenario where you always get the same champions. It's just who plays that card first. You're right. It could even go the opposite way, not even stimulate diversity. Because like we're saying, if it's so OP to have a Yuumi, someone's going to either want to take it away or play it once, right? So every series would now definitely have Yuumi again. So you're back at square one in a way, right? See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.